So the other day I posted about our responses to privilege. I want to talk about that just for a moment because I think it would help a lot of us everyday people who are trying to make a difference in the world, especially if we do have privilege. We're not even sure we necessarily... The first response to privilege often is defensiveness. I mean, that's generally the case anyways, if you feel accused by somebody or you feel like somebody's saying, hey, you didn't do this right. And the same thing happens with privilege, is often we feel like we didn't do something right. Unfortunately, the reason we didn't do something right is actually not really our fault, and that's kind of the definition of privilege, because, I didn't do anything to have white skin, but I have white skin. However, my husband is a guy, and so he automatically has privilege as a guy. So generally, privilege just kind of ends up being like angry, or somebody else is angry, or we feel attacked, or we just don't generally respond very well to it, and that's where the defensive action comes out, because we want to protect ourselves, because we care about ourselves. The problem with that, though, is that nothing actually changes and people don't feel heard because other people are talking about our privilege because they're experiencing some lack of some form or another, or injustice or whatever, and so they need to be heard. Okay, now hear me when I say that is like the most basic explanation, and it goes so much deeper than that, because a lot of times there's an insane amount of hurt on the other side of those and injustices that are actually happening and going on, and so that doesn't really give it justice, what I'm saying. Regardless, it's just one of the things that happens in response to recognizing your privilege. The other one is something that I experience quite frequently, which is shame. A lot of us feel shame because we have privilege, unfortunately. I've been told that I can actually feel guilt for all these things that I really probably shouldn't feel guilt for, and it's the same with shame. A lot of times I feel shame for things that are really not my responsibility, or condemn myself, and believe it or not, this is one of them. So then we have a bunch of people who have privilege who are pointed out, hey, you have privilege, and what ends up happening is that they respond with guilt and shame, and that doesn't actually help anything either, or at least it doesn't help those people, and I want to encourage you to rethink that response. So shame sometimes looks like beating yourself up, telling yourself that you're bad, or even wishing that you were a minority, changing your lifestyle to become a minority of some form or fashion, whether in poverty or whatever. Or it can be a response where you're acting on the outside to make things different, to bring about a more equity and justice, but in reality you might be doing it not for healthy reasons, or you're doing it out of guilt, which isn't generous, and that doesn't help. Actually, I take that back. On the outside, it can help to a degree, but it's not sustainable. That's more so what I'm saying, and it's also just not healthy. So the third response, though, is really one that I see that is usually good and has a great effect. So this one is humility, and considering others just as important as you are, or even better than yourself. This results usually in empathy, a willingness to listen, a willingness to hear what other people are saying, what their experiences are, learning how to hear what their solutions are, what they think can work, and it requires a lot of usually it tends to require a life change that is healthy and good, but more importantly, when you put aside defensiveness and you put aside shame, there are results. And the results of that are on both sides. I think that when we act in humility, there is the ability to respond in the way that people need us to respond, to feel understood, and to change situations. So not only is external change happening in the world, but there's also internal change happening in our hearts, where we're actually able and positioned to be able to connect with other people and care about them, and actually love them and have relationships with people. And generally, my belief on anything where there's privilege is often there's just a lack of understanding, and a lack of care, and a lack of love, and a lack of a lot of things that usually fuel the systems that create privilege. So if we want to change those systems, we actually have to bring it down to the relationships that love can be fostered in, understanding can be fostered in, relationships can be fostered in, because then we're actually caring about each other. And then that's creating the external change. So I'm pretty sure all of us have privilege to some extent. Some of us is with where we grew up. Some of it is with the amount of things we have. Some of it's the color of our skin. Some of it's the opportunities we have by growing up in different places in the world. Some of it's just we have more shirts than somebody else. And even people in extreme poverty have some privilege over other people in extreme poverty. I mean, privilege can happen anywhere, and since all of us have been on that side, education, that's another one, since all of us have been on the side of privilege, and so if we're going to be everyday advocates who are making a difference in the world, it's good for us to start really considering our response to the privilege that we have and how it looks to the people around us who we're trying to love. I hope this helps you a little bit. It helped me as I was thinking about it, trying to navigate this world of living justly in an unjust world where there's lots of privilege, and I have some. So anyways, if you have any thoughts, share them with me because I want to know them. You can DM me or talk with me about it because I know that my experiences are only mine and the ones I observe are only the ones that I observe, and there's probably others out there that I'm not seeing. So I know that many of us have had experiences, and some of these experiences can be hurtful for us as well as we're trying to form relationships with people who are already hurt. It's kind of a messy thing, honestly, dealing with injustice. And that's one of the reasons why we're here. Because if we're fighting for justice and making a difference and doing good, we have to be in the broken places. Okay, so anyways, just so you know, I'm Elisa, Average Advocate, and I believe that you can make a difference in the world.
I'm just trying to get to you.